All right, welcome everybody to the Zoom update. This, I guess, would be our post-Tritium Zoom update. So the goal of this one is we just kind of wanted to reiterate how far we've come, where we're at now, and then where we're going, so that you guys can kind of have a more accurate view. As it stands, we got Tritium out the door, thankfully. The activation was actually very successful, considering the complexity of it. We essentially created a new blockchain on top of an old blockchain and upgraded it and have it interact and interoperate with all the old stuff. So all of that is running well. Binance is still having a little bit of trouble handling the deposits, I believe. So they've been going off and on, but we've been working with them consistently to help them get up to speed. Everybody's been using Tritium as far as I have been aware, with great success. I think a lot of people have been having fun with it. Right now, currently, it's got smart contract functionality under the hood, but we haven't exposed all of that functionality just for the responsibility factor. Part of our design is to make it accessible for users, smart contracts, in a way that people can actually use. From a lot of feedback that we've received, a lot of the smart contract functionality hasn't truly, I guess, been realized with Ethereum in the way that a lot of people would like it to be realized. So keep, I guess, posted, because you're going to be seeing a lot more fun stuff kind of coming out under the hood, especially as we develop new contracts. Think of them as kind of like templates. So our ideal interface would be when I go to send Nexus to somebody, if I want to put it into a contract, I can enter into an escrow contract or a multi-sig contract, or right now the current default contract is just a reversible contract, which means if you don't claim this within a certain period of time, then I can claim it back to myself. And obviously a lot more as we start seeing more of that functionality. So that's kind of what is going to be happening with, version 2.1, version 2.2, 2.3, as you're seeing those all base 2, obviously, for version 2. Where Tritium++ is going to be version 3/version 5. The front end would be version 3 and the back end would be version 5. And Tritium++ is going to be a hard fork, which is also going to be activating a whole other set of new features. A lot of it from the user's perspective, you're not going to see as much of a difference, except for the DAO, obviously. But from the developer's perspective, there's going to be a lot more functionality under the hood with something that we call Invoke. Essentially, it's going to allow some form of verifiable computation on certain pieces of data so that you get kind of more object-oriented behavior, which basically means that it's expanding out the complexity or the capability of the contracting language that kind of runs on a virtual machine. But it's doing it very slowly. We didn't want to add too much complexity too quickly, for one, for debugging purposes, and for two, for scalability. We don't want to just throw everything out there and then have to whittle away where the problems are. We want to just put piece by piece by out, heavily optimized so that we can get as high performance as possible. So I think the fastest processing time we saw was 45,000 contracts per second. And what processing time means is the actual time that the block started processing and the time that it was finished. So processing speed is an important metric, because if you have a processing speed of, let's say, 10 contracts per second, but you have 20 contracts per second coming in over the network, then your node's always going to be lagging in the processing. It's not necessarily just the capacity of the blocks, it's actually your node's ability to process it. Some Bitcoin blocks have taken 25 seconds to process, depending on the size of the UTXO set, which is a massive, massive time in order to process that many transactions. With us, we're seeing average block processing time 5 milliseconds, maybe 10 milliseconds. So they're processing very, very quickly, which is really good. It's a good sign. I think our fastest synchronization time, I think I set that record at 17 and a half minutes. I finally hooked up a new SSD drive. I guess my sync speed was being dampened because I've destroyed my other SSD drives writing the LLD. So that's been really good. Very positive in that way. Now, the biggest feature, though, of Tritium++ is what's going to be called DAO. We have two parts of the DAO. So there's going to be the global DAO, which is the ambassador DAO, which is essentially going to be voting on the key allocation between different embassies. Right now, currently, it's UK, US, and Australia, and then that's going to be shifting over to require an actual network vote to get that allocation, so that there's going to be more community cooperation, I guess, as far as who they want representing and who they want developing for them. So people essentially be able to go get a contract directly with the network in that case and be able to earn money. developing for the network. So that's kind of the global DAO. Now the sub DAOs are going to be tokenization DAOs, which are essentially going to be realized by having a specific token that votes and has voting rights. So that's going to kind of combine together in with the whole smart contract functionality. So essentially, we're going to be seeing a lot more, I guess, smaller DAO organizations. When you do a token raise, you're not only going to be able to raise money and funds for it, but the actual funding mechanism can be regulated by that sub DAO. So that we're going to be able to start seeing a lot more of these DAOs come up. And that's kind of another value proposition for our token technology besides just to split dividends. It's going to be essentially allowing you to govern that on kind of the next level. So anything you'd like to add, Paul?
No, not at this stage. I think that's kind of it. I mean, other than the DAO, we've got a few little features that we wanted to put into Tritium, which would have meant pushing out the release date, things such as allowing token supply to be increased on an existing token. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what other little features there were.
A lot of little itty bitty ones like encryption in the object registers, but even then that's still supported. Like lots of little, I mean, Tritium++ is kind of like our, oh, we didn't have the time to finish it. We're going to put it in the next update.
Yep. Yeah, exactly that. But between now and Tritium++ as well, there's going to be obviously work going on in the GUI, which to add some nice front end to some of the functionality that we already have, such as being able to manage tokens in a bit of a better way, create and manage assets, create names and update your names and things like that, being able to rename accounts. So there's going to be a lot going on in parallel to the M++. There's going to be API development that is going on to not only support GUI functionality, but also to support some of the use case integrations that we have coming up over the next few months. So there's a lot going on. It's not just excuse me. It's not just the Tritium++ development. There's a few other things that are going to be going on in parallel. But that's all from me, I think.
Yep. So we have just basically completed our post-update phase, which was heavy debugging, making sure everything's smooth, getting support done, getting wallet guides written, getting everything kind of ready to go. So we're entering into kind of our new development phase, which we have an update 4.1/2.1 coming up. I think, when are we releasing in the next week or two, Paul? Something like that. And that's going to be a very important, that one's going to be actually a mandatory update. And that has a lot of the goodies that people are wanting as far as like changing your PIN, adding recovery phrases, and then a couple other things too. So we're going to essentially be having to go through a process too in order to establish the key allocation. So we're going to be having to have some sort of Zoom meeting on that next week, I believe, to kind of have a vote and discuss that, because that's going to be part of what goes into this next consensus update, which is coming out with 4.1, which is just to make sure that everybody's happy, kind of do an embassy review, have a lot of feedback from the community, and kind of continue forward from there. So that's something to be looking forward to. We haven't set the exact time, but it should be sometime midweek is when we're hoping to have it. So that's pretty much.
Yeah, we'll try and give sort of a week lead time into that as well, just to give people a bit of preparation on so that they can attend, because I think it's going to be important that a larger selection of our community join that Zoom, so they can hear what we've got to say about the embassies and our embassy review, and make sure that the general consensus among the community is that they're happy with the way we're going to continue with the funding and the way we want to operate. So yeah, we'll give about a week's notice on that.
Yep. And that's kind of just in part of right now, since we don't have an automatic DAO, we kind of have to do it manually. So this is kind of part of our manual process. If you guys remember last year, we did a similar type of process. So this next one is going to be important. We definitely would invite community to come in and ask questions, anything you've had concerns with or questions or anything you'd like us to address. That would be the opportune time to do it. and make sure that everybody's just happy with the direction that things have been going and the direction that we're going, and make sure that we get as much feedback as possible to make sure that we're adhering to everybody, because kind of part of the spirit of it is being community driven, and bottom up. So we like to continue in that spirit to do our best to maintain that. Cool. Well, did you have anything you'd like to add, Scott or Nick? No? I guess one more thing to add, the decentralized exchange. We're going to be also working on some.
Yeah, sorry, Colin. I was muted. I was just going to suggest you say something about the decks. We've had about a half a dozen questions in the last 2 days.
So after 4.1, the wallet guys are going to be shifting gears a little bit. Since a lot of the wallet functionality is there, and working on some basic, I guess, indexing for the decentralized exchange. Right now, you can actually buy and sell assets and trade tokens with one another on the DEX, but it's a little bit more complicated to use because the DEX, just think about it as many different layers, and the base layers of it all work without needing to upgrade the network. But we just kind of need to give you guys the window or the interface into that. So we're working on that as kind of our next major rollout before Tritium++, that will be integrated directly into the wallet, and allow you to essentially trade any assets or tokens with one another, so that people that are starting to make tokens can start to actually trade them. This type of DEX isn't anything that is limited. You don't have to request a listing or anything like that. You simply, the first person that posts a buy or a sell order begins the market. And that's pretty much how it goes. There's absolutely no restrictions on how that's going to operate. So that's going to be kind of our next really big feature. It's going to be probably coming out version 4.2, 2.2, 4.2, rather than this 2.1, 4.1. And that'll be pre-Tritium++ as well. It'll probably start out fairly basic, but obviously it will improve over time. But yeah, that's another really exciting feature that I think will start to give a lot more economic value to all of these tokens. Yeah. Cool. Was there any questions before we close? This one's kind of a little bit more of a brief one, but I guess if there's more demand for it, we can start doing these more regularly as we get kind of back into our next development cycle. So maybe starting in January, we kind of go back to bi-weekly. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I mean, we've since the Tritium release, I think we've all been spending a lot of time just supporting, doing support for people, and bug fixing. We haven't been doing too much active. We've done a little bit around the recovery phrase and being able to change a password and stuff like that. So right now we're just in the planning phase for Tritium++. We're going to start that in earnest. Well, we're going to start on it in this week, next week. So once we get properly into the Tritium++ development, I think it'd be worthwhile us doing regular Zooms. I think bi-weekly, weekly or bi-weekly is fine.
Yeah, cool.
So we'll start those soon.
So I guess to recap everything, so everybody kind of understands, we've been working really hard, getting everything debugged, network activated very well. People are really liking Tritium, had a lot of positive feedback. Me personally, I've really enjoyed using the wallet. It's been pretty amazing, especially how far we've gone. The software is running very efficiently. Tritium++, the main features are the local DAOs and global DAOs. Think of local DAOs as kind of like when you have tokens, it allows you to vote in kind of a local organization, where the global DAO is making decisions regarding funding. And then next in the pipeline after Wallet 4.1, 2.1, we're going to be working on one with the DEX module, so that people can start trading assets, even if it's a basic asset sales system or searching system. We'll start at very basic, but I think that'll be bringing a lot more utility for people to be able to see it. Then next week, around next week, we don't have the time specifically formulated. We're doing a yearly embassy review. So we invite everybody to come join that Zoom and ask the questions that you feel haven't been answered, or give a congratulations or whatever. It's positive or negative, just to assess the performance of the UK, US, and Australian embassies, to make sure everybody's happy with the way things have gone, and to assess the percentages of allocation that we have right now and see if there's any adjustments that anybody would like to have made. So make sure that you jot some time off next week in order to do it. We'll probably be releasing the date the next few days in order to give you guys a week-long runway. And we definitely encourage all of you to be talking about this and getting as much community involvement as possible, because in the spirit of the community, we want to make sure that everything that we've been doing is to the standards that the community wants, since essentially we work for you. So that's pretty much it. I guess if there's no other questions, we shall see you next time.